The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Wednesday, May 14th. Hope everybody's having a great week. As you can see, I am not at home. I'm traveling. I think I warned you that this was going to happen. So I'm in New York City right now, my hotel room, and it's going to be a challenge the next 3 weeks in terms of shows. I'll be here for the next few days, then I'll be in London and UK, Wales, and then in Israel. And won't be back until June 3rd. So be patient. Shows will happen. They'll just be unpredictable and a little spotty, but we will get some shows. I will keep you up to date in terms of the news. Don't worry, things won't happen in the world without me telling you about it and giving you my take. So we will continue to do that. All right, let's jump in. There's been a number of big news stories over. I will say this just before we get that. I will say we are time capped today, so I have to be done by 5 o'clock. I've got a restaurant reservation with Jeffrey Miller's Bar Miller at 6 o'clock, so we've got to make that. All right, so let's see. So yes, a number of big stories in the news over the last 3 days while I haven't been doing shows. So we'll try to catch you all up on what is going in the world. Probably the biggest story, at least domestically, from a domestic perspective, is Donald Trump's new executive order regarding drug pricing. As you probably know, as everybody keeps articulating, and as Donald Trump has certainly said in the executive order, the United States pays significantly higher drug prices than the rest of the world. Well, it turns out it's not really true. It's just not really true. So it is true that the United States pays much more than the rest of the world on drugs that are, within their patent period, drugs that are not yet generic. We pay quite a bit more, and we'll get to that. But what percentage of all drug prescriptions are actually drugs that do not have competition, that do not have generics? Well, it turns out that's only 9% of prescriptions, less than 10%. And yes, we pay a lot more on that. But on 91% of prescriptions, which are generics, we pay significantly less than the rest of the world. It's competition. We're a massive consumer market. And that competition drives down prices in the United States far more than it drives down prices in the rest of the world. And if you weight them, if you weight the higher prices on the 9% with the lower prices on the 91%, you get that generally we pay, on our drugs, less than, for example, what the rest of the OECD, other advanced countries, pay. Did you guys know that? So we keep hearing about we pay more for drug prices, but it turns out that that's just not true. We pay more for some drugs, and we pay less for other drugs. And on average, we pay less than the rest of the world pays, or at least the other developed countries pay on drugs. This is why you're listening to Yaron Brook Show, because you hear stuff you don't hear anywhere else. Nobody is going to tell you that. Nobody. Certainly not President Trump. So here's what President Trump has to say. For many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America were so much higher in price, all caps, than they were in other nations, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the exact same laboratory or plant by the same company, all in all caps, now lower caps. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct and rightful answer. Oh, yes, there is. We'll get to that. The pharmaceutical drug companies would say for years that it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be, for no reason whatsoever, borne by the suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me, and not with the Republican Party. We are going to do the right thing. Something that the Democrats have fought for many years. It's actually the Republicans have fought against this for many years, but okay. Therefore, I'm pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m., I will be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. I think there's some truth to that. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equate, and for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. Fairness to America, all caps, of course. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. Our country will finally be treated fairly, and our citizens' health care costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Never thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. All right, so the way this is going to actually be implemented is Medicaid will refuse to pay drug companies a price that is higher than the lowest price that any company out there pays. And since countries like Rwanda and Sri Lanka are very poor, and the only way they can afford many of these drugs is if the price is significantly lower, sometimes 80% lower, then the United States will insist on getting the same price Sri Lanka and Rwanda is getting. And if you have a non-economic, simple mind, then that seems to suggest that drug prices in the United States will go down by 80%. Because, hey, we'll stop paying the same prices as Sri Lanka. Isn't that cool? Now, we'll get to the consequence if that actually happened on our future in a minute. But let me just warn you of something that, the book Economics in One Lesson should teach us all. Never accept what appears to be first-level economic assumptions, effects. Oh, if we are willing to pay what Sri Lanka pays, we won't pay more than that, then the price will drop 80%. Well, but is that true? Is that what will happen? What else? What else could happen? You're a drug company. You sell a huge amount of your drugs in the United States. Most of your profits come from the United States. You sell a tiny little bit of your drugs in Sri Lanka. Now the United States is insisting on getting the same price as Sri Lanka. What are you going to do? You don't want to lose your U.S. market. You don't want to give up the profits that you're making in the U.S. market. So what do? Well, you raise the price in Sri Lanka. Indeed, you raise the price across the world. And part of that, what happens there is you stop selling the drug in Sri Lanka because when you raise the price, they can't afford it. So you stop selling you make a list of the countries where you're selling the drug for the cheapest, and you stop selling it there. And then, you go to the Europeans and you go to everybody else and you say, yeah, we can't continue to sell them at these really low prices. You have a choice. You can withdraw. We're not giving up the American market. American market is just too big. You can either raise the price or we're going to stop selling. Now, you might think that, hey, this is a phenomenal outcome. Now, note, it's not the outcome President Trump claims, right? President Trump claims the drug prices are going to go down by 50 to 100%. They're not. Drug prices probably will not go down much at all in the United States. They tried this before, where they said Medicare can't pay more than other insurance companies. Other insurance companies were sometimes getting better deals than Medicare. So they said Medicare has to have most favored nation status. It has to get the best price. And they thought that what would happen would be that the price in Medicare would go down. And that's not what happened. What happened was that the price for the private insurance companies went up over time. So, because people can switch out of Medicare and go to private insurance companies, we don't have a competitive market. Medicare is socialized medicine for everybody over 65. You have to be part of it. There's no competitive pressure to drive down prices. There's competitive pressure to drive up prices. So it's just not going to happen the way Trump says it's going to happen. Prices of American drugs are not going to drop by 50 to 80%. But prices will go up globally. Now, you might say, well, that's a good thing. We now will have all these other countries paying, right, into the system, whereas in the past, the United States consumers have basically funded R&D for these drug companies. Now the rest of the world will fund R&D for these drug companies. But again, that's not clear that will happen. As prices go up in many of these countries, demand will go down, total revenues will go down. In the United States, it won't change. Maybe in the United States, they'll have to cut prices somewhat. Maybe they'll cut them by 10%, something. But overall profitability of the drug companies will decline. If profitability of the drug companies decline, it's not super high today. If the amount of revenue they bring in declines, then they will do less research and development. And therefore, if they do less research and development, we will get significantly fewer drugs in the future. People have done some calculations, and we're talking about potentially hundreds of new drugs that we could have, we won't have. Now, some of that is already happening because of the Inflation Reduction Act, which allowed the president to choose 10 drugs that, he could determine the price and lower the price artificially in the United States, which Biden passed and Biden has done. By some estimate, I guess Tyler Cowen has run some estimates on that. Let me just find this post. Tyler Cowen has run some estimates on that. By his estimates, there will be 135 fewer drugs that will come to market through 2039 because of the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, this one has the potential to reduce pharmaceutical revenues far more than the Inflation Reduction Act, and therefore affect many, many more drugs than this. This is an unmitigated disaster if you care about your health. Now, people are upset because the United States pays high drug prices, and these other countries pay lower prices, and in a sense, we're subsidizing them. Pharmaceuticals make a chunk of their profits in the U.S. They use those profits for R&D, but the benefit of that R&D, the whole world benefits from. So there's a sense in which we're subsidizing the whole of the world. And that might be true. So here I ask you the question, what would you rather have? A system where we get a lot of life-saving drugs and maybe life extension drugs and and innovation in drugs, and a lot of money flowing into R&D, and yet we're subsidizing the world. Or we stop subsidizing the world, but we get fewer drugs. I mean, to me, the answer is pretty clear. I would much rather subsidize the rest of the world and get more drugs, better drugs in the future, than stop and not get those drugs. Now, there is a third alternative. This would require diplomacy. This would require actually use of American, what foreign policy people call soft power, and that is to try to influence other countries to negotiate higher prices, to up their particularly rich companies like the OECD, the Europeans, the Canadians, and so on. And there might be creative ways in which we could nudge them to actually pay more for the benefits that they're getting from these drugs. But this is not it. What this will do is it'll price out of the market poor countries. Now, what do you think the effect of that is? Because these poor countries, you think they're just going to roll over and play dead? That is, do you think that they will just say, okay, well, we can't get these drugs, so people will not get drugs, and they'll just die? They just won't get benefit from the drugs. What is the alternative to that? Again, this is what economic thinking is all about. Trade-offs, choices, options. What will happen to Sri Lanka or Rwanda when they can't get that, I don't know, that medication that helps lower blood pressure or fights or is used in treating cancer? They can't get it. It's a proprietary medication produced by one producer in the world under patent, and they can't afford it anymore. What are they going to do? And drug companies know this. This is why they give them the discounts. What are they going to do? I'm curious if anybody has an answer to what are they going to do. Yeah, I don't see any. What are they going to do? Well, what does this provide people an incentive to do? It provides people an incentive to do is to break the patent. Good job, Ayn Rand fan club. To break the patent. It incentivizes countries like India that have a huge generic drug manufacturing base to significantly expand into generic drugs where the patent is still in place, and make copies of all these drugs and start selling them to places like Sri Lanka and Rwanda, not compete in America because they would be sued if they did. And what are the drug companies going to do? Are the drug companies going to sue them? Are they really going to go after them that hard? Probably not, because the drug companies are going to be viewed as villains if they do. Are you denying the Rwandans life-saving drugs? I mean, that would be awful. The PR would be catastrophic. So Rwanda will probably still get their medicines. They'll suffer for a while. You know, people will die. And in the meantime, generic manufacturers will start producing these drugs. They will get them to Rwanda. Prices in America will not drop 50 to 80%, guarantee that. They will drop maybe a little bit, maybe 5, 10%, who knows, but they might not drop at all. And prices in Europe will go up, that's okay by me. But the total effect of this is that drug companies will make less money because they'll lose big chunks of the market. Remember, the populations are really, really big in countries that are relatively poor and are getting the best deals in terms of drugs. And no deals are going to be available because if you give somebody a deal, the United States gets that deal immediately. So you can't give anybody a deal. So I don't know, think about Nigeria with one of the largest populations in the world, or Indonesia, or Malaysia, or, I don't even know what the prices are of these drugs in these countries. But it just all collapses. There's no benefit to actually seeing lower drug prices for the 9% of prescriptions that are on patent. We want companies to make money off of those drugs, Because if they're not going to make money off of those drugs, lots of money off of those drugs, they won't invest in future drugs. And you know, this has been shown over and over again. When you put price controls, for example, years ago, Medicare decided that they were going to aggressively demand price reductions on durable medical equipment. The average price reduction was 61%. So these are like medical equipment stuff. So somebody ran a study on this, and what they find was the innovation in the medical devices plummeted. Firms had much less incentive and revenue to invest in R&D. The data showed new product launches fell by 25%. Patent filings, a proxy for innovation activity, dropped a whopping 75% after the tax cuts. This is an article written by G. N. Rogers, a study. Patents fell by 75%. Innovation gets crushed. So do you really want prices to go down? So it turns out that Republicans, MAGA Republicans, are socialists. They're quite happy to embrace stupid economic policy, quite happy to embrace socialist type economic policy if Trump thinks it's a good idea. I can also say that it's quite clear that the people around Trump just don't know economics. They come up with populist slogans, like we're going to cut drug prices, without thinking through the actual consequences of what they're doing from economics perspective. They need a Henry Hazlitt. Somebody on Trump's economic team needs to read this old book from, 1947 or 1949, called Economics in One Lesson, which would explain, not specifically with regard to this point, but would explain the principles involved, that price controls, even these kind of price controls, you never get the result you intend. There's a second level consequences and third level consequences, some of which I've described to you here. Again, not stuff you will get in anybody else's podcast. So no, this is a disastrous policy. It's a socialist policy, or put it more, it's a left-wing economic policy. But, and I'm not talking about the hypocrisy here, right? The fact that Donald Trump criticizes Kamala Harris for exactly this kind of idea. Here's what he wrote in August of last year. If you think things are expensive now, they will get 100 times worse if Kamala gets 4 years as president. Under her plan, Kamala will implement Soviet-style price controls. She will abolish private health care and make California's ridiculous tax policies the law of the land. What is he doing? What is he doing? So these price controls, stupid policy. They are not going to achieve what they aim to achieve. They will destroy innovation and progress in healthcare moving forward. They're kind of the worst of all worlds. There is no problem with drugs. The reason we in America consume more drugs than any place else in the world per capita is because we're rich. We have enough money. We consume almost everything more than everybody else in the world. We consume more housing. We consume more cars. We consume more food. Look at us. We consume more drugs because we're rich. When you're rich, you consume stuff. I'm sure we consume more vitamins, even though those are not regulated, not expensive. We consume more of them. So, yeah, it's And by the way, we have great healthcare. When you look at actually curing diseases and not lifestyle, the United States has great healthcare and great survivability and great life expectancy if you look at diseases, not at lifestyle. Lifestyle, we suck. We're so rich, we overeat. We overconsume in certain areas. And that causes all kinds of health problems. Absolutely true. And we're so riddled with crazy, stupid policies that people are alienated and confused and depressed, and they take drugs that they don't need, and in some cases they take the illegal kind of drugs and kill themselves. So, say goodbye to all the wonderful drugs that could be in our future that Donald Trump has helped eliminate. Literally eliminate with one executive order. Now, the good news is, there is good news. The good news is, like a lot of these executive orders, there's a chance that this is not going to get through. That is, this will be challenged in the courts, that, it's not clear that he has the authority to do this as an executive order, and that this will never actually become, there's nothing in the executive order in terms of how this is going to be implemented, how it's done. When Biden did the price controls on drugs, it went through legislation. None of that for Trump. It was evil enough that Congress approved this, and by the way, with some Republican votes. But, the good news of an executive order with regard to this is there's a chance that none of this will happen. Now, I will note that some drugs are already in short supply in the United States. It's hard to get certain things. This is not helping. If we want to reduce the cost of drugs, if we want to make drugs, the helpful kind of drugs, more accessible, more prevalent, more available to Americans, then the solution, as always, is deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. That will reduce price. The FDA is a massive cost and a massive burden to American pharmaceutical companies. It's why drugs are so expensive. So that is the solution. Not more controls, more regulations, more distortions of the market. So again, economic analysis shows this ain't gonna work, guys. And if it does work, it's a disaster. And even if not working, it's a disaster. It's just bad, bad, bad policy all around. All right. Let's see. All right. Another win for the Trump administration this last few days. They got a deal with China. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that a deal was cut with China over tariffs? Trump is hailing this as a victory. Many people in the MAGA world, or in the just economically ignorant world, are hailing this as a victory. But what actually happened? Well, Trump started a trade war with China, raising tariffs to the point where the United States placed 145% tariffs on China. China placed 125% tariffs on America. At those levels, there was no trade going to happen. Nobody was going to buy stuff at those prices. China, in the meantime, realized this, so it lowered significant amounts of tariffs on U.S. goods, well below the 125. They gave lots of exemptions because they know that taxing their own people for stuff that they need is stupid. So they kept 125% on some goods, but on most of the stuff they really needed, and then most of the stuff they thought didn't help them in the war with the trade war with Trump, they lowered prices. And China basically said to Trump, we're not going to negotiate with you. It's just, this is stupid. This is completely stupid. Now, they agreed because basically Trump basically backed off, right? He said, oh no, we're going to lower tariffs. Oh no, we want to be nice to the Chinese. Oh no, we're going to have an amazing deal with the Chinese. So Trump was frantically backing off because markets had reacted so negatively to the Chinese trade war. So on the weekend, they met in Switzerland, and the United States agreed to lower tariffs on all Chinese goods to 30%. That's 10%, which is the standard for everybody, and a 20% penalty for fentanyl, which is, because China exports fentanyl or something. I guess they sell the chemicals that the Mexican cartels use in order to turn them into fentanyl. So that's the fentanyl penalty. And then China agreed to lower tariffs on U.S. goods to 10%. Now, so we in the United States are going to pay a tax of 30% on all of Chinese goods coming in here because China sells fentanyl to precursor chemicals to Mexico. That makes sense. You, the ones watching the show, you should be penalized. Your costs should go up because China's doing something Trump doesn't like. So we're still losers as consumers. China gets to buy American stuff with a 10% tariff. Again, if the Chinese were really smart, they would just lower it to 0 and tell the Americans go stuff it. But okay, they want to tit for tat. They want to play that game, so they've got a 10% tariff, but it's much lower than ours. So their consumers are getting penalized a lot less than we are. And no, Trump didn't win this. I mean, before, what was it, Liberation Day or whatever it was called, he could have negotiated this deal. It's not even a deal. It's just a 30% tariff, a 10% tariff. Tariffs are still higher than they should be and used to be. Tariffs should be below 5% between China and the United States, and were that before the first Trump administration. This is just, it does allow particularly big American businesses to continue to exist. They won't go bankrupt because of the prices they have to pay for Chinese inputs. It was a complete capitulation of the United States. We got nothing from the Chinese. Chinese didn't give up anything, nothing. And the United States brought it down to 30%. I don't get it. Now, this is only 90 days. God forbid we create any kind of certainty here and predictability and, something we can say is going to be with us for a while. It's for 90 days. In the meantime, they negotiate, and they're going to do a mega beautiful, comprehensive, everything covered deal by then, by which time I expect Trump to completely capitulate to the Chinese, just like he is doing everywhere else. So, this was a joke, right? This was a joke. It just shows the complete futility of what Trump did when he raised the tariffs to 145%, the stupidity of it, all that volatility in the markets was for nothing. The uncertainty created for businesses for nothing. Just, sheer destruction of wealth in the United States for no positive outcome. This outcome, just like the UK trade deal, didn't need all those threats, didn't need raising of tariffs. And this 10% base rate is still way too high. It's a massive tax increase on Americans, even if tariffs are 10% with everybody and not a percentage more. 10% is like 5 times higher than average tariffs were before Trump did all this nonsense. And that's coming out of your pocket, my pocket. And it's making it's going to hurt American industry, hurt American businesses, and it's going to hurt American consumers. So tariffs are just, the whole strategy has always been really, really bad. Again, anti-economics. And what this has done is shown, we're not interested in bringing manufacturing back to the United States. A 30% tariff on Chinese goods for 90 days is not going to do that. A 10% tariff globally is not going to bring manufacturing back to the United States. It's also not going to increase revenue significantly. There's not going to be a huge amount of revenue that comes in from a 10% tariff. A little bit, but not much. And what was the other goal? Revenue reduction, bring manufacturing back to the United States. Oh, and a negotiating tool. As far as I can tell, we've negotiated nothing. Our tariffs, UK tariffs on us, are a little higher than they were before Trump's Liberation Day. I mean, we're not getting zero tariffs because we're not willing to give zero tariffs. So we're actually not getting any good trade deals. There's just nothing positive. Nothing positive is coming from this. I know that those who support Trump will spin this and spin everything he does, even if they're critical of Trump, like a Ben Shapiro, will find some golden lining in it. But there are none. There just are none in this. Just like the pharmaceutical price thing. This is just really, really bad policy. Destructive policy. Policy that makes us poorer and less free. All right. Talk about making us poorer. So there is this big, beautiful, amazing, stunning, best in the world bill going through Congress right now. Wait a minute. Are we on? Yeah, looks like we are. Not sure what's going on here. One second. Let me know if you can hear me, see me, hear me. Everything's good. Yeah, it looks like everything's good. Okay. So we have this amazing budget going through Congress, a massive tax cut for the American people, Trump tells us. And then they're going to cut spending, and we're just going to be amazing. Anyway, the first round of this has come out of the Ways and Means Committee. And so we're getting a flavor of what is involved. And what is involved is basically that we are going to be adding, on the low end, $5.3 trillion. On the high end, $6.2 trillion to the debt over the next 5 years, 10 years, over whatever term the budget is for. I think it's for 10 years. So debt is going to grow by 2034 to 130% of GDP. Spending is not coming down. Spending will grow. But these tax cuts are going to dramatically, the tax cuts they're going to make the tax system more complicated, more exclusions, more deductions, more stuff like that. The main tax cut is just keeping what we have today going forward. A lot of taxes are supposed to go up if they're not extended. So it's extending the existing tax regime, plus things like, tips are going to be tax deductible, and Social Security might be tax deductible, and a few other things are tax deductible. So you're going to get a bunch of loopholes for special interest groups, people who Trump promised a tax cut to. So you're going to get all of those. But the net effect, if you don't take into account the increased cost of funding, is $5.3 trillion. If you add to that $900 billion more in debt interest payments, then we're talking about $6.2 trillion. Now, if that's true, this would be the most expensive legislation in America since the 1960s, since like Medicare, Medicaid, and the war on poverty. This is Trump, right? Now, I'm all for tax cuts, right? If they're done right, and if, most importantly, they're matched, or actually should be more than matched, given that we have deficits, by spending decreases. But there is no suggestion that spending decreases are coming about. Indeed, Republicans wanted to cut Medicaid. That looks like it's off the table. It looks like this new drug reduction policy is going to replace it. They're going to claim that's the reduction in Medicaid, but it's not going to happen, as I discussed earlier. So we're just going to be in a position where we're spending much, much, much more on government programs. We're going to be, taxes overall in the economy are going to go down, probably from about 17% of GDP, 18% of GDP to something like 16.5% of GDP, which is just going to increase the deficit. It's just going to mean we have to borrow more. And you could argue that given the state of American finances today, it's probably worse to borrow than to tax. And I don't say lightly because I know how evil taxation is, but borrowing is just as evil. It's just taxing in the future, either through inflation or through raising taxes. So what's evil here is government spending, and it is the deficit and the debt. And what should be done with taxes is at the very least take a burden off of us and make them simpler, not more complicated. So again, a complete fail by Republicans because they can't come up with a strategy, and Trump won't lead them towards a strategy. There's no leadership here around a comprehensive strategy around cutting spending and rationalizing, if you will, rationalizing taxes. All right, let's see, where are we? Well, Trump, as you might have noticed from the news coverage, is in the Middle East. He's making 3 stops, 3 of America's main allies in the region. Not Israel, of course, because Israel is not really an ally. It's a burden, I think the Trump administration. And look, I think many people on the left and on the right today view Israel as just a burden that the United States bears. I don't think they see a value there. But Trump is in Saudi Arabia. He was in Saudi Arabia. He's visiting Qatar. Qatar. How would you categorize Qatar? Qatar has been over the last 20 years, 25 years, one of the main funders of terrorism in the world, main funders of radical Islam in the world, one of the main funders of the worst programs at American universities in the world. The biggest funder of American universities is the Qatari government, and they uniformly fund kind of left-wing, radical, anti-American ideas in American universities. But not according to Trump. Trump is there as their best friend, and indeed, as you probably know, because this has made the big news, they are giving, well, the other countries visiting is UAE, United Arab Emirates, but the Qataris are giving Trump a gift worth $400 million, an airplane. They're giving him a replacement for Air Force One. So a country funding a biggest terrorist threat to the United States that exists, radical Islam, Islamists all over the world, and they fund them. They funded ISIS. They were the #1 funder of ISIS. And I think once Saudi Arabia got out of, at least officially, the business of funding Al-Qaeda and others, it was the Qataris who filled the gap. They of course funded Hamas. They funded Hezbollah. They have good relations with Iran. That's why they serve as this intermediary for a lot of these things. They're giving the United States president a gift of an airplane that will replace Air Force One, where he is supposed to command. This is he is supposed to be in touch with the world. Secret stuff happens there. Classified stuff happens there. I mean, I assume the U.S. will sweep it for bugs and anything else. I assume it's going to be clean. It's just, there's something so crazy about this. And Trump, of course, thinks, oh, this is great. Only a loser would not accept a $400 million gift. Even Laura Loomer thinks this is insane. I mean, here's what she writes. I love President Trump. I would take a bullet for him, but I have to call a spade a spade. We cannot accept a $400 million gift from jihadis in suits. The Qataris fund the same Iranian proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah who have murdered U.S. service members. the same proxies that have worked with the Mexican cartels to get the jihadists across our border. I don't know about that. This is really going to be such a stain on this administration if this is true. And I say this as someone who would take a bullet for Trump. I'm so disappointed. Even Laura Loomer gets it. Shockingly, that might be. I mean, this is another topic that Ben Shapiro was critical of Trump on. Good for Ben. Whoopee. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. The sanction that the United States has given the Qataris. Of course, our largest military base in the Middle East is in Qatar. We bomb ISIS as they send them money. That has been the pattern over the last 25 years. It's insane, right? ISIS hasn't existed for 25 years, the last 15 years. So it's completely nuts. But this is Trump. This is Trump. This is what you get. Let me add that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because there's a lot to talk about here, but let me add that he was unbelievably friendly to the Saudis and is granting them the largest weapons deal ever for Saudi Arabia, a huge weapons deal for the Saudis. Of course, the Saudis have promised to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States, I think $600 billion. He is exuding just friendship to all these countries. Remember, Saudi Arabia is a brutal dictatorship. They're moving, they're becoming more Western, but that hasn't changed their nature as a brutal dictatorship run by one guy, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, who is a crown prince. He runs the place. Everything is according to what he wants. Again, he's an authoritarian thug of the worst kind. Or maybe the worst, but of one of the worst kinds. But Donald Trump, loves him. They have a great relationship. Of course, UAE is run by a sheikh, and Qatar is run by a sheikh, and these are all authoritarian regimes. But Israel, no, we're not going to go there. No. Israel, not a friend. These countries are friends. These are real friends. They don't make demands on us. They don't ask for our help. These countries just give us money. Money's good. We like money. Money is a sign that we're winning. Anyway, Trump's trip to the Middle East, pathetic, I think is the best word I have for it. And then today, the Trump administration, or was it yesterday? Maybe it was yesterday. I'm getting my days confused. Trump announced that he has normalized. He met with the president of Syria. Now remember, the president of Syria is identified by the U.S. State Department as a terrorist. He has a $10 million, or had a $10 million bounty on his head. His government is an Islamist government. This is our enemy, or was until yesterday. The organization he ran that took over Syria is identified again as a terrorist organization by pretty much everybody in the world. And Trump yesterday basically said that he is lifting all sanctions on Syria. That is, Syria is going to be a normal nation we're going to trade with. I guess they get the 10% tariff. I don't know, maybe we'll cut a deal. He met with this, evil human being who is the president of Syria. He encouraged him in that meeting to seek peace with Israel. I'm sure the guy took it very seriously from him. But normalized relationships. So he's basically sanctioning an Islamist regime in Syria, a Sunni Islamist regime that the Saudis will tolerate and the Turks are enthusiastically behind, but nevertheless an Islamist regime. This is I don't know, can I say this is a foreign policy new low for Trump? I don't know if I can say that because he has so many lows. I don't know that this is a new low, but it is a low. It is a low. Another one, I think, that Ben Shapiro is going to criticize. I'm just trying to figure out, where I'm, more critical than some of these others. This one, maybe he'll criticize. Maybe not as harshly as I would. But this is Trump in the Middle East. As part of this deal, we'll remember that part of all of this, and I think this was part of the deal part of the reason he got a deal with the Houthis is his trip to Saudi Arabia. He wanted to have that under his belt, in a sense. He wanted to present that as a victory. It's not. It was a defeat. The U.S. was struggling to bomb the Houthis. It was losing aircraft. Remember, they lost an F-18 into the Red Sea because of the maneuvers of the aircraft carrier had to maneuver in order to avoid a Houthi missile, and the plane fell into the sea. How many billions of dollars is that, an F-18? It was unbelievably expensive. The Houthis also shot down several American MQ-9 Reaper drones, which also incredibly expensive drones. And the United States' bombing campaign against them was doing nothing. Nothing. Israel achieved more in 2 days than the United States achieved in 3 weeks. And the United States has a lot more firepower and is right there in the region and could do a lot more damage if it wanted to, but it chose not to. So this half-hearted campaign against the Houthis was a disaster and a loss. Basically, the deal with the Houthis is American surrender. Just like we surrendered in the trade war to China, but much worse. We basically surrendered to the Houthis by cutting a deal with them, a deal that did not include protecting the shipping lane for other countries, a deal that did not include preventing the Houthis from firing missiles at Israel, supposedly strategic goals of the United States, all because it was expensive. And the reality is we weren't achieving much. Why weren't we achieving much? Because we don't know how to fight wars. And this administration in particular has no interest in fighting wars. It would rather surrender and capitulate to the worst kind of people in the world than actually fight. The declaration of victory over the Houthis came as complete surprise to the U.S. Central Command, which was told to pause up offensive operations kind of immediately. But initially, the military provided a pretty forceful proposal in terms of dealing with the Houthis, but Trump and his people backed off of that. They were not willing to go all out around this. And Trump does not want any military entanglements in the Middle East. He doesn't want anything, the lesson learned from all these other countries and all the campaigns the United States has had in the Middle East is not, we need to fight differently so we can win. It's, we just shouldn't fight. Yeah. It turns out that even F-16s and F-35 fighter jets were nearly struck by Houthi air defenses, which is very bewildering given the Israeli army runs F-16s and F-35s in enemy territory, more sophisticated than the Houthis, and suffers no casualties, nothing. So the United States better figure out what Israel does that allows them to take care of business that somehow the United States is not doing. I don't think it's a lack of good pilots. I think it has to do something with the technological and strategic advantage the Israelis have over it. Anyway, I think it's really important that we recognize, as part of Trump's Middle East policies, that his favor is towards the Saudis and the Turks, who are quite tolerant of Islamist regimes in the area. He wants a deal with Iran. That's another reason why the Houthis and the Saudis are pushing for a deal in Iran. And the reason the Saudis are pushing for a deal with Iran is they don't trust America to take care of Iran, to actually pummel them, to destroy their capabilities to launch offensive operations against Saudi Arabia. So they'd rather have a deal than have kind of a mediocre military offensive by the United States. And finally, I think this will all culminate with a certain abandonment of Israel. Not a complete abandonment. There are too many pressure groups within the MAGA and right-wing world that are pro-Israel. There are a lot of that are very anti-Israel, but there are a lot, so it won't be a complete abandonment, but certainly a much tougher stance. It seems like Trump has already lost his patience with Netanyahu. He's demanding a ceasefire. He's demanding resolution of the Gaza, and he does not want Israel to engage in taking over the Gaza Strip as they are planning to do supposedly later this week. So it's going to be really interesting. The relationship, by all accounts, the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu is not good. It is not good. And I have to say, as I predicted. I will remind you of that yes, I know I'm very anti-Trump, but I get this stuff right. Shockingly, surprisingly. All right, we don't have time. Okay, so two quick ones. First, I mean, this is so upsetting. So the United States is really going out of its way, this administration, the Trump administration, to undo all of the asylum provisions that Biden enacted to provide asylum for people, for example, escaping Venezuela, the Venezuelan hellhole created by Chavez and Maduro, two basically socialist thugs. They created asylum potential for Cubans running away from communism. And there are hundreds of thousands of people in the United States right now waiting for asylum hearings where it will be determined whether they can stay in the United States or not. And the Trump administration is basically reneging on all that, throwing that all out and trying to deport all of these people who are here asking for asylum. So people escaping from regimes that I think most of us would recognize as really evil, really, really bad. And the excuse is, it's all illegal, somehow illegal aliens. They're not. They came in under a law. The law might be bad. You might not like the law, but they're not illegals. But they're going to be deported. They're all going to be deported. But there's one group. There is one group of people who are achieving asylum in the United States, are being welcomed into the United States as refugees, and getting a red carpet treatment. So as we're killing all these asylum programs that involve Venezuelans and Cubans and people running away from gangs in Nicaragua maybe, or Nicaragua is another authoritarian hellhole, gangs from Guatemala or whatever, as we're eliminating all those asylum programs, the one we're embracing, the one where they're getting red carpet treatment, is for South Africa. This is for white South African farmers who are being persecuted by the black majority and by the government in Pretoria, in the capital of South Africa, where their land is being confiscated and where there have been significant acts of violence against them. Now, the way whites are being treated in South Africa is horrible. It is disastrous. It is disgusting. As somebody who has family in South Africa who are white, I have lots of concerns about what's going on in South Africa. It is truly terrible. But isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that if you're white and get persecuted by blacks, the United States is welcoming. They're open arms. If you're brown and getting persecuted by brown people, I mean, what's worse, to be white in South Africa today or to be just a regular person in Venezuela? Let me tell you, as somebody who knows something about South Africa, because again, I have relatives there and I've been there, I know that doesn't count for much. It's worse for the Venezuelans. And these are not just any white South Africans. These are the Afrikaners. These are the descendants of the Dutch. These are because those are the farmers. They are being persecuted more than the non-Afrikaners. But remember also that the Afrikaners were the ones who instigated apartheid, supported apartheid, kept apartheid alive for all those years, did just horrific things to the black population in South Africa. Now, that doesn't justify anything being done to them, But it's just, I'm all for taking in refugees from South Africa. I don't like refugee programs at all. I would much rather have people coming to this country on the basis of work. But why them? Cool, we love you, and why do we hate these others if it's not race? If this administration is not practicing racism in its immigration policies and it's in its asylum policies? I don't see any difference. Again, these white Afrikaners are indeed victims of unjust racial discrimination, as the State Department claims. But is that any worse than the way Venezuelans are treated, or many South Americans are treated by their own governments? So I call racism on this one. I mean, again, I'm all for accepting them all. It's not what's happening. All right. We'll get that another time. All right, quickly. Milei. Milei is always the guy I go to for good news, right? Good news. Well, Milei's government in Argentina announced yesterday that they are lowering import tariffs on cell phones and computer electronics from 16% to 8% this weekend, and then to 0, oh my God, what is he doing, in January. Now, this is part of, just a small part of, generally trade liberalization, where export taxes and import taxes are being zeroed out over time. I wish they did that faster. I think the Argentinian economy would benefit enormously if Milei did it faster. And by the way, he's doing this unilaterally. No trade deal. You don't need trade deals. Trade deals are way overrated. Just lower tariffs to 0. Unilaterally. That's the only trade policy that makes any sense. And also, regarding Milei, there were local and state elections in Argentina, and Milei's alliance did very well. It won or gained pretty much everywhere. This bodes really, really well for the parliamentary elections that are going to happen later this year. It means that he will have people now representing his point of view at the level of the provinces, where they've tried to undo a lot of his reforms that he's done at the federal level. So this is really, really important. And it shows that the Argentinian people, while he doesn't have, sadly, an overwhelming majority in these local and state elections, I wish that were the case, they are supportive of his policies. They are rewarding him with some victories. And if that can carry on into the parliamentary election, Argentina is set to achieve great things. Great things. So at least somewhere in the world, there's a real effort to move in the right direction. And that is a real positive. Am I saying Argentina isn't super rich because of their massive tariffs? Argentina isn't super rich because of their massive tariffs, and because of their massive export taxes, and because of their regulations, and because of their taxes, and because of a lot of things. A lot of things. But getting rid of tariffs is a step towards freedom. And freedom is how you get rich. So any move towards freedom is a good move. Any move away from freedom, i.e. Trump tariffs, is a negative. It's very simple, the principles of policy, how to do good policy. All right, let's jump into the Super Chat. I'm limited on time today. We are going to, let me just see what's going on here. So I'm going to take these questions, and then I am going to have to run. All right, let's see. I just want to see how long all this takes. And okay. All right, let's see. Silvanos. Silvanos is, hey, Yaron, I loved your talk in Michigan. Keep it up. Yes, thank you. My talk in Michigan is up online. We put it up yesterday. I hope you watch it. It's about the Enlightenment and the importance of the Enlightenment. Great Q&A, I think. You'll really like the Q&A. So check it out. It's on YouTube. I don't know if it's gone up yet as a podcast, but I'll make sure that it goes up as a podcast as well. Maybe it didn't go up as a podcast, but I'll make sure it goes up as a podcast as well. And then finally, what else do I want to say about that is, yes, there's one other thing I wanted to say, not related to that, but I will be in Phoenix, Arizona in June to tape another one of these courses for the Peterson Academy. This time it's going to be about the corporation. In other words, about American business. It's going to be historical, moral, economic analysis of the American corporation. And it's going to be June 18th to June 20th. June 19th to June 21st. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It'll be in the mornings through early afternoon. And we're looking for people to serve as an audience for this. So if you're interested in being an audience member in this, then you can sign up to do it. And, you know, particularly if you live in the Phoenix, Arizona area, it would be great to have you there. The bigger the audience, I think the better the course will be. It gets me more motivated, more excited. It'll be fun. You'll see how they tape. It's a real professional job. It used to be in Miami, now it's in Phoenix. You'll get an opportunity to interact live with me. You'll hear the course. You'll get it for free. All of that is available. So if you're interested in doing that, let me get you the info. There's a page where you have to go and register so that you can be screened by the Peterson Academy. But let me find it. I should have prepared this in advance. It's not that. Huh. Yeah, okay. No, it's not that. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So to do this, you go to Brook for me, B-R-O-O-K, paperform.co, C-O, not com, just C-O. Brook.paperform.co. I'm going to put this in the chat. If you go there, you can register and sign up. It would be great to have you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I promise you a good course. All right. I'm doing all the $50 ones. Thank you, Sylvanus, for $50. There's Clark for $50. Whoops, but Clark started with a part one, which was $20. Okay, part one. Whoops. I had someone send me a private Facebook message cursing me out and getting hysterical because I posted anti-Trump comments. This is a person I viewed as a perfectly reasonable and decent, become a rabid dog. Welcome to my world. The old me would not have blocked the person because we've been friendly for so many years, but that level of blatant disrespect, I just blocked them immediately. When is it proper to burn a bridge when you've had a good history with someone? Well, when the cost of having the relationship, keeping the relationship, is greater than whatever benefit you have. And part of that cost is somebody is rude and hysterical and nasty towards you. There's just no reason to keep the relationship. And this is over politics. Imagine if you got into a personal dispute, how they would go after you. It's not, I don't think one should burn bridges over somebody supporting Trump, okay? But if somebody is being nasty to you on any issue, why would you want to continue to have a relationship with them? So I think the nastiness is where I would draw the line. As you say, hysteria. And what, in the case of Trump and his hysteria about Trump, what does that say about him? That is a level of irrationality and emotionalism, over defending somebody not worthy of defending. So it's doubly bad and evil and despicable and something you should run away from. Because if they're this bad on something like politics, how bad could they be when it gets to something much more significant I wouldn't want to do business with somebody like that who got really nasty about these things, right? Because, if they get so nasty about politics, what happens when there's some disagreement about a business issue or about a friendship, other issue relating to friendship? So I think you're absolutely right to block him. I think you have to be very, very, very selfish and very diligent in devoting your time only to people worthy of you devoting your time to them. And I don't think somebody who treats you like this is worth it. And I think that's the criteria. Is it worth me devoting time to this person? Friendship means energy, time, effort. Otherwise, it's not friendship. Is energy, time, effort worth investing in somebody who is speaking like this to me about something, about this issue or any issue for that matter, but certainly about an issue like this? Thank you, Clark. Really appreciate it. Dave, it is somewhat amusing seeing self-proclaimed conservatives bending over backwards to defend the politics that actual conservatives have been fighting for decades. And they do it with such confidence, not a smidgen of ideological awareness. I think that's absolutely right. Because remember, as Ayn Rand taught us and told us, there's a video of her saying this, I think in 1969, conservatism is an empty vessel. It's nothing. It doesn't hold anything. And the people who who adopted conservatives were not principled. They didn't have any principle that supported capitalism or free markets and economics and these economic issues, the political issues. They stood for nothing. And when you stand for nothing, but you associate with these ideas because that's the tradition, that's what conservatives have always done, and they kind of make sense. You're not too adamant about them. You don't have a fully fledged moral defense of capitalism. You can't because you're an altruist and you're a Christian. So you hold these ideas about free markets kind of as a vague, general sense that you are supportive of them. But really, it's empty. Empty. And then it's just a question of when somebody like Trump steps in and says, no, this is better. Here's something better. And that's it. And then some conservatives will stick to the free market principles, but those are the people who are already never Trumpers. They're the people who left Trump's universe a while ago because they saw this coming. But the people who stuck with Trump have given up their mind, have given up any principle related to freedom and liberty. And now it's just a matter of, well, if Trump does it, there must be a reason. He's playing 3D chess, and this is good, and it must be good, and I'm not going to be confused by reality or facts or what's going on around me. And I'm sorry for all the people who voted for him. I feel bad about the fact that he betrayed you. Now, whether you acknowledge that betrayal or not is up to you, but he betrayed you because you thought you'd get a better version of Trump, if there is such a thing. And he's just the worst version of Trump. What you're getting is the worst version of Trump. And I hope that you come to realize that you made a mistake. And I'll say, I told you so. I'm not blaming you for making a mistake, but you've got to acknowledge you made a mistake. This guy's really, really bad in every dimension, in every policy. And conservatives now out there defending. Jonah Goldberg has a long article this week about what it means to be a conservative and who's a conservative and who's not a conservative, because I'm not concerned about conservatives taking this position, right? Doesn't surprise me at all. But if you're a conservative, if you're one of the better conservatives, like Jonah Goldberg, who's a better conservative, this is very troubling to you because this was the movement you were part of building. If you're William F. Buckley, he's dead, but if he were alive, this would be very concerning to him because this is the movement he built, and now they, in a sense, they're betraying, in concrete terms, the things that they thought they believed in. But if you're me, you're just going, yeah, I mean, what? This is not surprising at all. This is, the conservative movement has always stood for nothing, and this is just another illustration of the fact that they stand for nothing. Now they stand for Donald Trump. They certainly don't stand for any ideas. And the remaining, the ones who are pro-free markets and against price controls and against Medicaid, setting prices on drugs, they've known Trump was bad deal for a long time. And they've been fighting within the movement, but they've lost. The reality is that the Jonah Goldberg and the Dispatch and those people have lost. They've lost the conservative movement. They've lost the Republican movement to the Trump mindlessness syndrome or the Trump zombie syndrome. And those of you who think Trump has not betrayed you, even though you voted for him, it's, you know, you're part of the problem. If you think, if you're happy with the Trump that you got, you are part of the global problem that we're all living through. You are, and you are, from my perspective, part of the enemy, because you are supporting destructive policies for the United States of America, for our freedom, for our liberty, for me. So, you know, yeah, a lot of people are very happy with Trump, I know. I see it every day. They justify everything that he does. Everything is cool, everything is good. He cannot do wrong. But that's the mindlessness syndrome. And that is a position that's anti-American. It's a position that's anti-freedom and anti-liberty. And Trump is an anti-freedom, anti-liberty president. And you support him at your own peril, the peril of your liberty and your freedom. I talked about the jet that was gifted to him. I don't know if it's legal or not. It's despicable. It's ridiculous, particularly given the source of the gift. I mean, nobody else would gift it to him. The only people who would gift him a plane like that are people who have an agenda, right? I mean, he's not going to get a gift like that from our friends. He's only going to get a gift like that from my enemies. Qataris will give him a gift like that because $400 million is nothing for them. And they buy a lot of goodwill, and they need that goodwill because they're bad actors. So, yeah, here's another guy who's happy with Trump. I mean, yeah, you're the enemy of freedom and liberty. And you are a supporter of Islamist regimes like Qatar. It's just, I'm calling it like it is. Fine. If you want to think of yourself as an enemy of freedom and liberty, go for it, but that's what you are. It would be great if you realize that. So we've got some people happy with Trump. That's good. Arum. I mean, it's not good. I mean, I'll just say it. If you're happy with Trump, there's something seriously wrong with you. Again, you are an enemy of freedom. You're an enemy of America. You're anti-American because Trump is anti-American. And you are a friend of Islam, because Trump is a friend of Islam. You're happy with his trying to make a deal with Iran. You're happy with him getting a jet and visiting the sheiks of Qatar. You're happy with him groveling before and surrendering to the Houthis. That's part of the deal. You're happy with Trump. You're happy with price controls on drugs. You're happy with suspension of due process and maybe habeas corpus. You're happy with the disregard for the Constitution. You're happy with rule by executive order. You know, all this stuff makes you happy. And if that is the case, then you are an enemy of the United States in philosophical, ideological perspective. You're anti-American, and you're certainly anti-freedom and liberty. And you're certainly not part of my team. All right. Last month, I requested call to arms for YBS fans to get Yaron on Destiny. Was this a coincidence? Also, any future plans to collaborate with Destiny? Great show between the two of you. I don't know if it was an accident. I don't know If it was a coincidence, I don't know who prompted Destiny to reach out. Somebody actually prompted him. One of the listeners to our show said it could have been you sparked the idea in his mind. Are there future plans? No specific plans, but I do have plans once I return from this trip to reach out to him and see if he'd be willing to have me on to discuss a particular topic rather than kind of a get to know you session that we did last time. So I'm hoping. He seemed to have a good time. He seemed to enjoy it. He seemed to be favorable towards it, and he did invite me back. So I'm assuming I'll be back. I do not hate peace. I love peace. I love peace through strength, real peace through strength, not peace through weakness. I think peace through weakness leads to violence. It leads to 9/11. When Democrats are weak and it leads to war, you guys flip out. When Republicans are weak and it leads to war, you're all for peace. But it's peace through weakness that I'm opposed to. I think that leads to war. I think, and you're seeing that, I think if America was strong, the Middle East would be a completely different place. I don't think there'd be a war between Pakistan and Ukraine, and I think Putin would, even after invading Ukraine, would basically cut a deal. And it's Trump's weakness that is causing the opposite to happen. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Everything you accused Biden of doing in emboldening the bad guys, Trump is doing even more. So weakness, peace through weakness is not peace. It's just postponing evil. Peace through strength is real peace. But America hasn't been strong in a long time. Hasn't presented itself as strong in a long time. It's, Trump groveling before the dictator of North Korea in his first term, weakness. Trump going to Qatar and accepting this gift, $400 million plane, weakness. Trump basically giving into the Houthis, weakness. Trump putting pressure on Israel to, give in to the Hamas, weakness. Weak. Trump is a weak president, weak foreign policy. And the rest of the world knows that Trump, siding with Putin against Zelensky, weakness. Now, maybe he's flipped on that one. Maybe he's become much more pro-Ukraine and anti-Russia in the last couple of weeks. Why? Weakness. There's just nothing there. I don't live in a world of make-believe. I just live in a world, I don't know who lives in a world of make-believe, but the reality is that America could present a strong position in the world and there would be peace. And we don't. And you're the ones who live in a make-believe. The make-believe is that Trump is doing good for America. He's not. He's undermining America in every turn. You're delusional and living in a world of make-believe, thinking that siding with Ukraine, with Russia against Ukraine is going to bring peace. You live in a make-believe world if you think that giving into the Houthis is going to lead to long-term peace and prosperity. You live in a make-believe world if you think that having a deal with Iran will prevent them from building nuclear weapons and destabilizing the entire world. You live in a world of make-believe if you think Trump raising tariffs on our friends and our competitors, geopolitical competitors, is somehow good. The tariffs are positive. The tariffs can ever be a good thing. That's completely make-believe. That is the most delusional, detached from reality thing possible. So the reality is that I am the only one dishing out reality, truth to you guys, and you guys are committed, some of you guys are committed to sticking your head in the sand and, dreaming of a world that doesn't exist. I don't want America to burn. I want America to have peace. And indeed, it will have peace if it was strong. All Trump is doing is encouraging the Chinese, is encouraging all the bad guys in the world. And if you don't understand that, then you don't know history, which you don't, I'm sure you don't. You have no clue of history, and you have no understanding of how foreign policy and how military policy works. The last thing I want, and the last thing would happen if my policies were followed, is burning in America. America would be the safest place on the planet Earth. Michael, if Kamala price fixes, she's a commie. If Trump does it, it's bold and for the people. And you're a lefty if you call it out. MAGA is just showing the new woke. And it'll end exactly like the last woke losers. I'm not going to get into the discussion about whether that's woke or not. But they're showing that they, on economic policies and on other things, first of all, they're statists. They're 100% statists. They elevate the state above all. And secondly, MAGA are leftists when it comes to economics. They're complete leftists. And they are also personality worshippers. That is, it's about Trump. It's not about the policy. It's about defending Trump no matter what. It's not about any particular policy. You could ask the people here on the chat right now who think Trump is amazing, who are happy with Trump, what he could do to make them feel unhappy, and there's no answer. There's nothing he could do that would make these people change their mind about Trump. That's how mindless it's become. Paul, did you see Andrew Bernstein's pathetic article in Capitalism magazine supporting Trump's actions? I thought it was all conjecture and evasion. He had the nerve to quote Ayn Rand. No, I didn't see it. I didn't see it, and I'm not interested. I think at this point Trump is indefensible. I think you could still say, okay, but he's better than Kamala. Fine, maybe. I don't think at this point you can even say that. Soupcask, would you read my objective Star Wars fan fiction? Just for fun? No, probably not. If you paid me, maybe. I'm still so behind, so wait if you're going to pay me for me to catch up. When are we going to Rosella Sushi? Well, I'm going tonight, not to Rosella, but to Bar Miller, which is the sister restaurant that has the Michelin star. But we can go and, just remind me next time I'm coming to New York that you'd like to do that, and we can hang out. Michael, so caving is winning now. We are back to the pre-trade war, and its mindless supporters are cheering the stock market gains. Yeah, the stock market is back to where it was before Trump did Liberation Day, and they're happy in some ways, and they're back for now. Nobody says they're going to stay here. Michael again, what's the best way to get past an injustice done against you? Sometimes it seems like moving on is a form of emotional repression. I think it's psychologically accepting it, identifying it, recognizing it, accepting the emotional harm and pain that you feel over it, but also realizing that you have to live and you have to move on. You have to move on because you should really be focused on positive values. Positive values. And that's what you should be focused on. Not your average algorithm. Trump surrenders and declares victory. Yeah, that's a strategy, and people like Gromit0237 think that he's a genius for surrendering and declaring victory, because if he declares victory, it must be true. Michael, when you properly integrate objectivism and live by it, people will like you. They'll gravitate towards your positive energy and non-zero sum onlook on life. Yeah, and I think that's a major way in which we change the culture. We just dominate the culture in the sense that we're the happy ones, the successful ones, and people want to be like us. Liam, Japan has had a stagnant, no-growth economy for over 30 years, yet Japan is still a lovely place to live. How can that be? Well, I mean, it's a lovely place to live if you're willing to accept a low standard of living. Tokyo is a lovely place to live, in particular, because it's the zoning laws are very, very loose. And Tokyo does not have the kind of zoning laws we have, so it doesn't have this central planning of neighborhoods, so that you get, these multi-use, very friendly, walking-friendly neighborhoods that are very pleasant. But I don't know how great of it is a place to live. I mean, Japanese are much poorer than Americans, significantly so. And I'm not just talking about, this is adjusted for the cost of living. They're a lot poorer than us. And I wouldn't want to swap. Liam, it seems like Democrats don't want to stop Trump because he's implementing their policies faster at larger scale than they ever could. Well, I don't think that's the case, because I don't think Democrats care about policy. They care about power, and they'd like to stop Trump. I just don't think they know how. Because what are they going to argue? Oh, you shouldn't put price controls on drugs, when that was their policy agenda and he just stole it from them? I don't just say that Trump surrenders, I give examples. I actually give you examples of Trump surrendering. He surrendered to the Houthis, he surrendered to China, and those are just facts. And you can, if you actually think through the examples, you'll see that it's true. We're not dominating anything. And the only reason we dominate is because of everything that was done before Trump. That is, our economy is larger than any economy in the world, not because of Trump, but because of everything that happened in the last 250 years. We have the largest and strongest military in the world, not because of Trump, but because of everything that happened in the last 250 years. Trump is putting all of that down. It's not my opinion. I'm giving you facts. I'm giving you evidence. I'm giving you exact examples. You choose to evade those facts and evade that evidence. I'm talking to the Trump supporters on the chat. Oh wait, Hopper Campbell. Trump seems a little deflated during his interviews, lower energy, less confidence in his first term. He must be receiving a lot of negative feedback and doesn't know how to process it. I think it's part of it. It's probably, he's also older. Just has less energy. He's quite a bit older. He's 78. It's pretty amazing how well he does, given how old he is in terms of energy. But yeah, it's tough. But yeah, I think the market response to his tariffs was pretty shocking and upsetting to him. And he knows he screwed up, and that's why he's been backtracking since then. And again, backtracking since then. Michael, I wonder if Gomit is Scott. How can anyone get this furious about illegal immigrants unless fundamentally driven by racism and hatred? There's no rational reason to care about this issue. Yes, it's primarily, I think, driven by nativism, xenophobia, and racism among a big chunk of the American population, sadly, and by the fact that illegal immigration is being demonized as an issue. Those people, as individuals, are being demonized, particularly by the right, forever, without a legit defense. And the people who defended the immigrants were leftists. So that just made it worse, because we know that anything the leftists advocate for is bad and evil. So, I mean, the immigrants have not had a proper defenders. There's a few of us, but very few. I don't look debilitated. So if I have TDS, then it's invigorating. It's not debilitating at all. It's what I see everywhere, what I see among all you Trump supporters, is an inability to think, inability to make an argument, inability to provide evidence and facts and anything to suggest that you're right, because to some extent, you don't know you're right. You're just mimicking what the leader has told you to mimic. You're just mouthing off the things that you were told to mouth off. You can't think. And I see that constantly. I see people in the chat, and they provide zero evidence, zero examples, zero facts to their arguments. And it's the easiest thing in the world is to say, yeah, he's got TDS, hopeless, rather than prove me wrong. You can't. Is there any sort of war tactic, this is Supkaski, that no matter the context is always wrong, like deliberately giving measles to an enemy population? I don't think you can say that without context. I think you actually have to provide a context. In many, in 99% of the context, giving measles to an enemy population is wrong. But I'm sure I could figure out something where that's the only way you can win. It's the only way you can save civilization from an evil, from invasion and destruction, that maybe it would be right. Yeah, I just mimic CNN talking about it. I'm sure everything that I said today, you go back to my economic analysis of the price controls, that is straight from CNN. You find me an article or a spokesman of CNN that says what I say about immigration, about drug pricing, or about the Middle East. And I bet you, and this is where we can see how dishonest you are. I bet you can't find a single person that will give the analysis that I just gave on drug pricing on CNN, or a single person in CNN that has my analysis of the Middle East. Not one on CNN, not one in New York Times, not one in any of these places. But this is the level it will, which you cannot argue these points. You cannot bring facts and evidence and reality. You just make TDS, left-wing media, which is clearly not true. All right, James, I might not be able to enjoy any success because I'm radical, because I speak the truth. Truth is not popular these days. It's been a century since we believed cameras stole the soul. Nowadays, cameras would starve because there's nothing to steal. For too many people, that is true. Clark, you say successful people who aren't good with reality are good with people, but people are part of reality. Is a salesman less of an engineer than an engineer? No, if a salesman's honest and straightforward, then he's focused on facts and he deals with people based on facts. But if he's a manipulator, then he's less than an engineer. What I say with people who are good with people is they're manipulators of people, or allow themselves to be manipulated by people. So they say what the people want to hear. But that's not a form of dealing with facts, because it's not a form of dealing with truth. It's a form of dealing with this psychological element of people, the untruthful or the deceptive part of people. I'm going to have to stop in a few minutes, so there will be some questions I have not answered. I promise to pick them up next show. Will price controls have any positive effects early on for a brief period? Will it boost the stock market until shortages start to occur? Well, as I said, I don't think that there will be shortages of drugs, and I don't know what positive effects even mean. I don't think that the stock market is going to treat these price controls on drugs positively. Who is going to go up? Drug companies are not going to go up, so what prices are going to go up? There's nobody to benefit in the stock market from what he's doing in terms of the drug pricing. Not your average algorithm. Does MAGA think if the swamp won't drain, then burn it down? Is capitalism and freedom the real swamp to them? I mean, it could be that capitalism and freedom are the real swamp. I don't think they care about the swamp. I think they've forgotten about the swamp. The reality is, as I said during the Trump first administration, Trump has created more swamp animals and has grown the swamp more extensively than any president I can think of. He's much worse than Biden. And tariffs are a great feeder of the swamp. Tariffs are something that encourage people to lobby and bribe and manipulate and try to get good deals, and you're seeing that all around you. So tariffs are great swamp feed for the swamp animals, and the result has been more swamp animals. One second, guys. All right, we're good. Not your average algorithm. Why is fear and hatred winning when objectivism has been out there for a while? I don't know. It hasn't been out there for long enough, and we live in a culture driven by emotionalism. In spite of objectivism, people have rejected objectivism. A significant number of people out there have rejected it. It doesn't mean it's false. It just means it was too early. Some future generations will look back and say, they had Ayn Rand and yet they behaved this way. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Not your average algorithm. It's hard to tell if this is going to be a 4-year populist setback and then things go back to normal, or Nazi Germany, here we come. I doubt we're heading towards Nazi Germany. And listen to my discussion with Larry Salzman who had a positive spin on some of what Trump is doing, not the stuff that makes the headlines, but positive stuff that Trump is doing, and then what is likely to come post-Trump, particularly as he fails on many of these other things. Michael, since the Enlightenment wasn't fully able to eliminate Christianity, was fascist authoritarianism bound to rise again and again? I mean, some kind of authoritarianism. Again, let's not label it any particular type. I don't know what type of authoritarianism we'll actually get. But yes, the inability to eliminate Christianity has set us up ultimately for some kind of authoritarianism. That's what Christianity sets you up for. It has an authoritarian epistemology and ethics. James, without objectivism being taken seriously soon, I don't see how humanity survives. There's no other intellectual force that can stop this unwinding of rationality and civilization. I don't think you're right. I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it has to happen soon. It will happen, but the urgency is not, things are not as bad as, we can recover even from this. I'm reading a lot of history these days, and you should read what Wilson did during World War I, and then what FDR did during the Great Depression, and what these others. It's been bad before, and we survived, and it's bad now, and we will survive. It'll be messy, and it'll be costly, but I do think civilization survives, and we do have time. Enric, so do we need to elect politicians who understand economics and freedom? That would be good. If there were any, can we find some? Liam, does MAGA only want proto-fascism, not full-blown fascism? I don't think MAGA knows what it wants. I don't think MAGA is a coherent ideology or philosophy. Right now, they want what Trump wants, and they want some kind of authoritarian, kind of soft authoritarianism. But could that morph into full-blown fascism? Absolutely, absolutely. Cook. But Yaron, sure, Trump is trying to control drug pricing by executive order to the point where Democratic Ro Khanna advocates solidifying it into law, of course. But at least MAGA is not a socialist left. That's right, they're not. You know, so we won. We won. It's a victory. We'll get socialism, but from the right. That's always the case. The right will never fight socialism. Not really. They pretend. See, this is the kind of statements that they come up with. Instead of facts and logic, they say, MAGA wants to hold the Republic together, not communism. Yeah, hold the Republican together by adopting communism, by adopting socialist policies. There's no logic, there's no facts, there's no evidence that they're presenting. There's just these statements about MAGA. All right, the Doodle Bunny, why are Republicans going after Medicaid rather than other programs? Is Medicaid the least popular because a lot of minorities are on it? A lot of poor people are on it, a lot of them are minorities, but of course a lot of poor people vote Republican, so they're in a quandary. This is why it's not ultimately going to pass. They don't want to go after Medicare because everybody's on that, right? And they don't want to go after everybody over 65, and they don't want to go after Social Security because everywhere's on that, and Trump has promised not to go after those programs. So Medicaid is the low-hanging fruit because it's only poor people, so they can afford to piss off poor people. They think they can afford to piss off, but they're struggling because poor people vote for them, so maybe they can't. Enoch KR, I thought people carry extra weight because they can't afford nutritious food and go to less expensive options. Does it define us as wealthy? No, that's not the reason at all. There are plenty of opportunities to buy healthy food. Healthy food is not expensive. You know, all you have to do is cut out the sugar, cut out the simple carbs, and you're already going to be better off. You know, and that doesn't involve spending a significant amount of more money. Indeed, people in poor countries are thinner. So we're rich, and you can see that. And it's not only poor people who are rich, who are fat. I mean, you know, the obesity epidemic is not just poor people. It's people are not taking care of themselves and not thinking about what they eat. And particularly doing it to their children, you know. It doesn't take a lot a lot of extra calories every day on a systematic, consistent basis to get you to be obese as an adult if you do it as a child, and particularly if a lot of those calories are coming from sugar and simple carbs. Liam, when Marx called for dictatorship to get rid of dictatorship, and Trump called for tariffs to get rid of tariffs. Yep. I think people with an authoritarian mindset embrace contradictions. It's annoying. All right, I'm keeping these questions I haven't got to. I have to run. I've got an Uber waiting for me. I will see you all. I think we're going to do a show tomorrow at about the same time, maybe a little later, maybe closer to 4. But we will do a show tomorrow afternoon, and I'll get to these questions tomorrow. Thank you to all the super chatters. You guys were great today. And yeah, see you tomorrow. I'll tell you about my meal at Bar Miller. Bye, everybody.